Chapter 38. Atlantic Ocean, somewhere closer to Florida. Thursday afternoon, 1695. Beads of sweat dotted Marci's brow as she pored over the numbers in the totals column again, doubling back to the column of expenses. Though she was only marginally qualified for her present task of balancing the books, there seemed to be an obvious emerging pattern of mismanaged pirate booty that was impossible to ignore. It seemed a good-sized portion of each prize went missing, to where she couldn't tell, before then being dispersed to the crew. And yet she'd heard Francois's men sing his praises as the fairest pirate captain on the seas, noting they split everything evenly. Therefore, Marci decided she would confront Francois directly and professionally about the discrepancies in Marcos's ledgers, assuming any person in a position of management would appreciate the same initiative. Incorrect again, Marci. Francois, she slowed as she entered his cabin on the second knock. Come, he smiled up innocently, motioning to the chair in front of his desk. How do you find our affairs? It all seems to be in order and up to date. Bills are paid. There's just a small little thing that I've noticed going through Marcos's ledgers. He tilted his head and impatiently tapped his foot. I've, found that Marcos could have been, might have been. Been what? The suspense is killing me, Francois cackled. Well, if I'm not mistaken, it looks as if Marcos may have been embezzling booty. Francois seemed surprised, then worried, then narrowed his eyes suspiciously. You see, Marci opened the ledger and pointed to the third column of numbers, which Francois reviewed upside down, knowingly nodding at random intervals, almost as if he couldn't actually read and were only pretending as she went on. This column here lists the booty from each pirating. The second column is expenses, meaning we took in more than we paid out, but the surplus is missing. Oh, that. Francois pursed his lips, his eyes narrowing as he stared down at the upside-down numbers before clearing his throat. That is the coin set aside for the birthday party fund. Oh, Marci tilted her head in confusion. Francois went on glibly. Each month, I like to do something special for the crew birthdays, and this, he pointed to the correct column for once, reflects the booty set aside for the August pig roast. The beachside birthday party pig roast when we make land. So that is where the surplus coins are, Miss Marty Pants. Now let's not tell the crew and ruin it, Marci, okay? There. See? Mystery solved. This was the pattern that began to mark her days. After the infrequent skirmish, Marci would be brought to the great table in Francois's cabin and charged with the task of counting the pirate booty, a portion of which would be taken by Francois with a naughty flash of his blue eyes to be secreted away for the aforementioned birthday party fund. The rest of their prize was entered into the totals column of the ledger and dispersed evenly amongst the crew. Unfortunately, when Marci asked about allocating a share for the women, Francois haughtily reminded her they were only temporary ornamentations to the ship and would soon be gone, back to their own lives as promised, when he announced the ladies would be given passage to their port of choice when they arrived in Tortuga. A declaration met with cheers from the homesick women aboard, except for Marci, who had nowhere to go, and Genevieve, who sat with her jaw clenched and arms crossed, moodily staring out at the churning waves. But they never made it to Tortuga, and August came and went, and there was no birthday party. Even worse, there was no real pirating or pillaging either. just sailing in circles around the Caribbean islands, eluding the English navy as the pirates preyed, rather lazily it seemed, on damaged, floundering and sinking merchant ships for scraps. "Oh, Marci, my dear." As Marci scurried from Sebastian's fencing lesson, the Duchess hailed her, patting her sweating bosom as she approached. "Do you think I could make an appointment with the captain? Myself and the ladies have some concerns about this Tortuga we'd like addressed." "I'll check," Marci promised apologetically without slowing, her faith in the integrity of these pirates rapidly waning as the weeks slipped past. With her hand poised on Francois' slightly ajar door to knock, she heard familiar strident voices from inside and froze.
"Does she know?"
she heard Philip screech, followed by a porcelain crash.
"And what about that nosy bookkeeper? I still think she killed Marcos."
"Jenny knows nothing," Francois consoled him, his voice muffled.
"And the bookkeeper will never say a word. I'm not even sure she can really read. Look, I needed someone to help me with the totaling, and you know I'm no good at sums, puppet. Besides, she'll be sold off before she knows it, and who'll listen to her about missing booty in the sugarcane fields of the Caribbean, eh? No one. I don't like her beady eyes,"
Philip added, while Marci reflectively touched the corners of her eyes, frowning as she strained to hear more.
"She'll be gone when we get to Tortuga,"
Francois asserted, his accent missing.
"Will you sell Genevieve with the rest?"
Philip pried, adding,
"Because you know my preference." "I have not decided yet, but you let me deal with sweet, naive Genevieve,"
came the cold reply. Marci's equilibrium tilted as she backed into the shadows, her hands shaking while she canvassed the hold, searching for Aaron to warn him. Meanwhile, Genevieve sought out her beloved Frankie, ignoring the fact that it was an even-numbered night, only to find the candlelight spilling from his cracked door, the shadows of Francois and Philip dancing on the wall in erotic patterns before she, like Marci, tiptoed away undetected and in shock. In the corner of the armory, Sebastian tenderly kissed his beloved Juana and unburdened his soul, whispering guiltily, "I must tell you something, my darling, but you mustn't tell anyone else." And Aaron, at that moment, was deep in his cups with a talkative helmsman who, cheered by the thought the ladies would soon be sold off, sloshed his rum merrily while speculating how little the Duchess would bring them at the auctions in Tortuga. Aaron paled before excusing himself and raced unsteadily across the deck to find Marci, who slammed into his chest as she barreled from the hatch. "Oh, Aaron," Marci sobbed, "please come with me. We must gather the others for an emergency meeting." Juana fled the armory, cursing a blue streak in Spanish as she tightened her corset with Sebastian hot on her trail, his trousers sagging to his knees as he begged the enraged woman for forgiveness. Then Genevieve staggered into the hold behind them, and everyone collided in the shared space, crying in unison, "That little bastard!"